Chicago is the hub for many industries. But how about something a little more youthful, a little more hip? Something the kids might call the cat's meow. How about the gaming industry?
Chicago is the hub of arcade and the arcade industry, right? The coin-op business where a lot of the arcade machine companies were and still are.
But there's one game that stands out as uniquely Chicago. Any guesses? Does pinball spring to mind?
I'm Seth Davis. I'm the CEO of Stern Pinball. When you ask people about pinball, usually what we get, and hey, they still make those things? Yes, we do, and they're awesome.
Meet Seth Davis, the CEO of Stern Pinball, based right here in our very own backyard, Elk Grove, Illinois.
Stern Pinball has been in the Chicago area since the 1980s, within the sort of arcade boom.
Let's travel back in time to the tubular 80s, the golden age of arcade. With television, music, and film dominating the mainstream, the pinball industry did the smartest thing it could. It joined the fun.
That was one of the reasons why the company decided to work with licensed IP, was because the company itself didn't have a name or a brand that anybody would recognize. It's a lot more fun to say, hey, here's my Star Wars machine. I know what the story is. There's probably going to be a Death Star in it.
And from that moment on, pinball became synonymous with pop culture.
If you're going to put one of these in your house or in your location, you want people to immediately know what it is. Having a great property like a Godzilla or a Metallica or a Dungeons and Dragons, instantly everybody knows what that is when they look at it, right? And when the company was founded, we were the small guy.
But soon, Stern Pinball became the entire industry, producing 70 to 80% of all things pinball.
So Chicago has a long history with the arcade business, the coin-op industry. We also have, and this is not to be discounted, the supply chain that goes with it. It links somewhat with the auto industry supply chain, right? They use a lot of metal, we use a lot of metal. Here we are today, still making pinball. We're, the world's largest manufacturer and designer of pinball machines.
And just how much work goes into a pinball machine? Don't get your wires crossed. It's not easy.
A lot goes into a pinball machine. A bit of a miracle anytime one gets made and all comes together. It starts about 2 years in advance of the product coming to life. About 18 months in advance of the title being released, our design team will get started. We'll prototype on paper, then we'll prototype for real with a whitewood. So it's called a whitewood because there's no art on it. We have electrical engineers, we have mechanical engineers, we have 2D artists, we have 3D artists. You got music, you've got art, you've got all of that together, fun gameplay.
All this industry, an entire phenomenon born right here in Chicago. You would assume officials embraced it with open arms, right? Wrong. In fact, Chicago hated it so much, it was made illegal for about 40 years. The reason? Well, keep your mouth shut and I'll clue you in. Capiche?
While it was banned, you would find these pinball machines in, seedy bars or bowling alleys. But at the time, they often had cash payouts, like people would gamble. It was kind of seen as a game of luck that could be like a slot machine.
With the crackdown on vice during Prohibition, pinball didn't exactly score with the government, but it did with the Chicago mob.
Pinball machines generated $250,000 a year to members of the crime syndicate. Not only did pinball make money for the mob, but it was also just a legitimate front for some of their other underworld dealings and investments. The mob is interested because the money to pinball machines was harder to track.
The history of pinball in general overlaps with the history of sort of gambling and casino. A lot of the precursor type games, there's been versions of, the predecessors to pinball out for a long time. Pinball didn't, in a way, come from any one place.
Pinball began as a game that looked nothing like it does today. Its earliest roots can be traced back to 1700s France with a game called Bagatelle.
And then that transitioned to versions of pinball where it was really just a box you were shaking.
Enter Ballyhoo in 1931. This one, like today's pinball, came equipped with a spring-loaded plunger.
There was a period of time where the flippers were added. The last 50 years of the 20th century was where pinball really took off and because it became a game of skill.
Even so, public perception is always hard to shake. It took an old-fashioned courtroom showdown with this man, Roger Sharp, a pinball enthusiast. The case was called People versus One Pinball Machine. And in a room packed with jurors, media, and eager onlookers, a confident Roger Sharp strolled up to a single pinball machine and got to work. After just 3 minutes of pin drop silence, the courts reversed their ban. Roger Sharp became widely known as the man who saved pinball. It wasn't gambling, it wasn't chance, it was sport.
We actually still have issues with that in some international markets. There's still some countries that have old laws from 50, 60 years ago that categorize pinball in the same category as some gambling things and things like that.
While you can still find some at local arcades playing for fun, others take it a little more seriously.
Pinball is something that people really get into, and they really enjoy playing with other people, and they really enjoy competing with other people.
Meet Raymond Davidson, a world-ranked pinball player who lives right here in Illinois.
I'm a pinball fanatic. I've won multiple world championships in pinball. I go to all the tournaments I can, try to improve my rank. I'm currently ranked 7th in the world. I first got introduced to pinball at my grandparents' house, just growing up as a little kid, 3 or 4 years old, could barely reach the flipper buttons. So it was always this challenge to try to master the unmasterable, I guess.
From the clutches of the Chicago mob to the ire of politicians, pinball has come a long way. But at the end of the day, whether you play for fun or for rank, pinball has never left, and according to Seth, more popular than ever.
If you look at things like pinball conventions and pinball competitions, they've never been bigger. They've never been bigger than they are now.
I think pinball is just so iconic. The sounds are very iconic from the old games with the bells and the chimes.
It's just a fun experience, and it's always been, and that's why there's always been a version of these kind of games, because they're fun. People enjoy them.